Great. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started as folks begin to funnel in. So welcome to our session on where should Teach for America place corps members. My name is Fatima Burnham-Watkins, and I was a 2001 Baltimore alum. I've been on staff, yes, be more. I've been on staff for 13 years now. Most recently, I was the executive director of Teach for America New Jersey for the past 6 years. Thanks, Ron. And now I am the senior vice president of our teacher leadership and development team. So all the things that sort of touch our corps members nationally. Our panel today, we're going to examine this question of where should Teach for America place corps members. And we know that place matters, right? And that's true for the work that we do right now. Our kids' zip codes dictate right now student outcomes. And as we all try to work to dismantle that, we're realizing how much just place matters and where we place and partner matter towards that. So it's not really just a process we're talking about living into our purpose and into our mission. I'm confident we're gonna have a meaty conversation today because we've gotten a ton of feedback, both surveys and just talking to corps members and alum. They want more transparency about how we're making decisions on where to place and what factors go into that and how do regions decide what that looks like and sounds like in their context. And so with the help of our fabulous panelists, we're gonna be able to have a conversation that explores that a little. So speaking of our panelists, let me introduce them. So directly to my left, we have Helda Murad. She's a 2006 Baltimore alum as well, and she's currently a principal in nearby Prince George's County. Next to her, we have Tommy Chang. He's a 1997 Los Angeles alum. He's the current superintendent of Boston Public Schools and also served in similar capacities in Los Angeles. We have, next to Tommy, we have David Hardy. He is a 2003 Miami-Dade alum. He currently serves as the Deputy Superintendent for Academics in the St. Louis Public Schools and has also done work in both Camden, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and New York City. Next to him, we have Joanne Gama. She is a 1997 Rio Grande Valley alum, and she's currently the superintendent and president of IDEA Public Schools. And last but certainly not least, we have Pat Strzokowski, and he's the superintendent of Clark County Schools in Las Vegas and been a huge partner of Teach for America for a long time. So can you give our panelists a round of applause? So yes, I worked on staff for 13 years, but I was a teacher first and foremost, and I still believe I'm a teacher. So we're gonna open this up with an activity. On your seats, you have a set of cards. As Helda just said, it's like the old school clicker. We're going to old school. So you have a set of cards that are different colors. And what I'm gonna do is read a statement on the screen and ask you all to use your cards to tell me what you think is the right answer. The purpose of this activity is just to get a sense in the room of how much folks actually know about where we place and other questions about how many teachers that teach beyond their 2 years, things that we hear all the time. And I think as you look across 52 regions, what does that look like in aggregate? Because it could look very different when you're in your own community. All right? So again, I'll read the statement, give y'all a second to process. You hold up the color that corresponds to the best answer. We'll take a look around and take stock of what that looks like, and then we'll move on. Cool? Our panelists are also going to participate because they have not seen these questions either. So the first one, where does Teach for America currently place? So when we think about all 52 regions, and we're talking on aggregate, when you sort of size them all up, what's the distribution of charter, district, and other placements? Take about 10 seconds, hold it up. I'm seeing some green, some yellow. The answer is B. Oh. I heard some yeses too. I love gold stars too. So we have, it's 29% charter, 69% district, and 2% other. And again, we have lots of different perspectives on what that looks like when you're talking about 52 regions coming together, but depending upon where you are, that can look so different. It can be 70% charter and 30% district, all district, or other placements. Second question. What percentage of alumni stay to teach for a third year after their 2-year commitment? Lots of yellow, some green, a mix from our panelists. The answer is D. Yellow. 60% of our folks stay in teaching. I love this. 60% of folks stay in teaching after their 2-year commitment. And why I'm bringing this question up is because we're actually going to have our panelists talk about what should go into those factors. Who should hold the weight of that? Is that Teach for America and what we should be doing? Is that the schools and what they should be doing? What is the mix and balance there? So it's interesting to see 60% of our folks are still in teaching. And then this last question, there's no right or wrong answer at all. Just want to be able to get sort of a pulse in the room about where people are coming into this conversation, so we can sort of see at the end of this. I'm going to ask you this question again and see if our panelists, by just sharing more specific context about their location and the factors they consider, if that shifts your opinion at all. So no right or wrong answer. Do you think Teach for America is getting it right when it comes to core member placement, meaning which regions and schools to place them? Lots of yellows. That means y'all all can be moved. Lots of yellow, lots of yellow. Great, thank you so much. So here's how we're going to dive into this session. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time, and I mean very little, giving some brief history and context about some of the factors that have gone into our evolution of thinking about where to place core members. We'll spend the remainder of the time having our panel sort of dive in and give you their perspective on things. And we're going to change it up a little bit. How many ESPN fans, sports fans out there at all? Great. So we're going to try to do it in the format of PTI, pardon interruption. We're going to try it as a way to get a lot of information out and a lot of different opinions out in a short amount of time. And then we'll have a brief audience Q&A, and it will be brief, because we want to give the panelists a bulk of time to talk. But there will be folks, if you're going to be collecting cards, can you raise your hand? I see Kim and Allie. I think Nikki's back there somewhere. If you have an index card or a question, write it on the index card, hold it up, and one of these lovely ladies will come and grab it, and we'll fold them into the Q&A. Great. So let's give some context before we dive in with our panelists. So this question of how do you begin to tackle this question of where to place core members? I think when we think about this question, we have to look at it in two ways, right? It's the macro level of that question and the micro level of that question. The macro level is where should we sort of geographically place core members, meaning how many core members need to go into New Jersey, how many should go into LA, et cetera, et cetera. The micro question of that is once they get into their cities, how do the regions determine where they go? Meaning the distribution between district, charter, subject, content, grade area, like that's sort of the micro level. We're going to spend most of the time on the micro level because we have really great panelists who can tell us from both their communities and Helda, who's holding it down here as the sole principal, like what factors actually go into that. I'm also going to acknowledge this because my friend Ron reminded me of this. We sort of, it can't always sort of get it right in having all the diverse perspectives. I'm going to acknowledge that the rural perspective is not necessarily represented here. I know Joanna can speak to it a little bit, but that perspective I think is important and it's not represented here, and I want to just acknowledge that. So, over the last 25 years, we've seen Teach for America evolve. We've also seen the educational landscape also evolve. So I'm just going to do a brief sort of like click through of from 1990 to now, how things have changed, right? So in 1990, we were externally mainly dealing with teacher shortages and emergency certifications. What does that mean? That meant that if you were a core member in 1990 and you wanted to teach, or a teacher who wanted to go in and sort of help fill one of these shortages, you could not teach beyond your 2 years because your emergency certification didn't allow you to do that. You jump ahead to 1999 and you continue to see, one, Teach for America is growing and other things are actually happening externally. Alternate certification. There was literally legislation passed so that folks could actually teach beyond 2 years if they chose to. And the demand for just teachers was still growing, so it allowed districts to actually meet that demand because they had more folks coming into the pipeline. During this time, we also had to sort of start to draw a line in the sand of like, okay, we had a blanket approach to how we thought about placement. We started to use free and reduced lunch as a proxy to sort of help us say, which schools should we be placing in? Then you jump to 2009, you see Teach for America is continuing to grow in terms of the regions it's placing, but we had things like No Child Left Behind, lots of folks talking about human capital and how to drive towards a human capital plan, and Race to the Top that was changing things externally. And we know that with Race to the Top and No Child Left Behind, there was sort of connection to funding that came into that as well. And then lastly, we jump to 2016, and we're sort of talking about building local movements and really getting clear on the unique context that's happening in each region that's driving their human capital plan, right? Where are they infusing the number of new teachers? Where are the innovations happening? So the purpose of me sort of showing that timeline is to say two things were happening. The external landscape was happening, and Teach for America was growing, and we had to figure out how to marry those two things. And then lastly, and I'm turning it right over to our panelists after sort of share this, you see sort of now we're in 52 communities, 52 unique communities that have a complete different vision for how they get to one day, for how they think about that. And there is a sort of series of puzzle pieces that go into that equation. We first start with that vision, that region's vision, right? That vision is informed by community, is informed by the folks who are there with the kids, who know the kids, and so it starts with that. And then a region has to consider a myriad of different variables. So I try to cluster them, right? So first, as I said, we started with demonstrated need. Do they meet the bar of like the percentage of free and reduced lunch, right, as our proxy? And then you'll see that the sort of lighter blue ones are things that I call sort of the external things that have to be at play. We can't go into any region and say, hey, we want to just place folks here. We have to have both funder interests, which we don't like to talk about sometimes, but we need it. We need money on the ground to keep the work going, teacher development expectations, partner commitment. Are we partnering with folks who understand what it means when you get a core member? We need to sort of be a united front for core member development. Local support and backing, and like the geographic strategy playing out in that community. The darker blue ones are things that internally we have to also think about. Core member clustering, what it means to have 3 or 4 core members in a school or 10 core members in 10 separate schools, and how that goes into staffing and our capacity to reach them and to understand the vision of that school, hiring timelines, et cetera. So again, we're trying to marry this external sort of evolution with this sort of internal balance. All of those things go into how a region thinks about placement. So that's enough from hearing from me. I'm going to turn this over to our panelists now and say, when you see these sort of variables and pieces playing out, and thinking about your own context, which one sort of resonates to you as, yes, I'm so glad that Teach for America is considering that in placement, that should be there, and which one you're sort of not so keen on or have some questions about, or frankly disagree with that it's in this sort of line of consideration. And Dave, I'm going to toss that question to you first and then have others chime in.
Sure. So in St. Louis, it's a very interesting city for a couple different reasons, one of which St. Louis City is the largest school district in the region. However, we have a number of bordering districts that range from 2 to 3 schools in size upwards to 8 or 9 schools in size, and there is a huge racial divide once you move into the county. So for us, when we think about the context of where we're placing our our core members, we're really focusing on how do we get the highest quality core members to the areas of greatest need. However, I think the next piece that I would want to see from Teach for America and the support is how do we actually get the core members with the best leaders, right? So right now, we place our core members in schools where there's a vacancy, where there's just flat out a need. However, we're not as strategic around placing them where they can grow and then where they can sustain and become better over time. And I think that's a big piece that needs to move us forward.
Great. Pat, you want to jump in on that question?
Sure. Clark County is 320,000 students in 357 schools, and so we have lots of openings. We hired 2,000 teachers this last year, and that was not enough. We're still 650 short this year. One of the challenges that we have is making sure that the placement is right, and so we work closely with the EDs to make sure that they are in with supportive leaders. We do have principals who actively seek TFA candidates to come in who know that they can grow and build that support. We do need to make sure that we have small clusters, because I've seen specifics where in specific schools, they've literally changed an entire culture of a school just by coming into that school. And so I think that the clustering is important, and putting with the right leader is essential. We now have, TFA and leadership positions all across which is important to our growth of our district.
Great. Any other panelists want to jump in on that? And I would love to hear what from this list isn't resonating or missing.
I can talk about, well, I agree, for us, a strength is the state certifications. I'll start with a positive, because there's also partnership with other universities. So our core members come out with a master's degree, so all their certifications taken care of, and actually they're ready to take other leadership roles in the school building. But I would say something we need to work on, at least in my county, is with the geography strategy. Prince George's County is not DC. So we are part of the DC region, but it's a different district. So I think we need to be very deliberative, and the Teach for America team needs to be very honest with the core members so they know what the differences are. It starts with the very basics, like difference in pay. And I think it's just fair to inform our incoming core members that there are differences in that. Also, the charter school whole process and structure is very different. In PG, we don't have charter, we have some lottery schools. So having that conversation is important, and I also agree with the administration and leaders that also believe in that mission of Teach for America core members, and they just don't see it as, that's just part of the pool where I can pick teachers from. I mean, it's more than that.
Great. And Helda, I think you bring up a good question to sort of segue us into the second question I had, which is when you consider those factors, and Tommy, I'm going to throw this to you first, but when you consider those factors, and also considering sort of this marriage of what's happening externally, we have sort of less folks wanting to come into education. Our schools of education are not producing education majors. We have sort of the number of folks who are interested in alternate route organizations, Teach for America, Ed Pioneers, et cetera, sort of not being there. How do you sort of think about that happening externally, the needs your sort of counterparts talked about internally, and how you think about your own human capital talent?
So I'm fairly new to Boston. I've only been in Boston for 6 months, and but was previous in LA, and I will say, like, LA, Boston is emblematic of this issue, because emblematic of this issue in this way. Boston does not have a pipeline issue, meaning that we don't have a teacher shortage. In LA, we did have a teacher shortage. Nationally, if you look across the board, we actually don't have a teacher shortage. But in certain regions, you have massive teacher shortages. Like when I hear the numbers that Pat throws out, it's like, that's bananas to me. But in Boston, the way we've been thinking about it, because we do have access to great pipelines, and we have tons of partnerships. It's about actually making sure our school leaders can actually match with the teachers that are coming into their school. So we have to figure out, how do we allow principals to hire their own staff? How do we allow teachers to be able to not be forced placed into a school? And that's, I think, that's the kind of the challenge, at least in Boston.
Great. I should just jump in on it.
Yeah, so I can give a little bit of the rural perspective. I think some folks still think of Deep South Texas as a rural community. I actually think it's quite suburban for me, I guess. So Idea Public Schools is all the way from Brownsville to the Roma area, which is where TFA places, and we're also now in San Antonio and in Austin. And we hire, mostly due to growth and attrition, anywhere from 200 to 400 new teachers a year. And the reason that's so large is it just depends on how many new schools that we're opening each year. The districts, I think sometimes in a lot of rural communities, the best way for me to explain the Rio Grande Valley is to picture just a very long highway, and every exit is a different community, right? So you take one exit and you're in Far, then San Juan, then Alamo, and all of those are a different district, and the district is the biggest employer in that community. They're the largest employer in that community, and folks are very prideful, obviously, in the communities, and if you graduated from that community and you want to teach in that community and you consider that community to be home. I think one of the things that I think is important, I do think it's important, I remember this from my own core experience, to place core members in districts where there are other core members, where those other core members have been successful, where those other core members can teach them how to navigate the district, which schools, which programs, which leadership programs in the district are really going to help them thrive. I actually think that's why I became so ingrained in my own school and in my own community. There were 4 other core members there. In terms of placement for us, one thing, and maybe Hilda can speak to this more, we have 44 principals. Some principals want core members and some principals don't want core members. And they don't want core members for a variety of reasons. They might have had a bad experience. They've just experienced maybe one year they had a lot and they've started experiencing a lot of turnover, and they attribute that turnover to core members, and they want a little bit more stability in their school. And so at the district level, what we do first is we say, well, who wants core members? What does the incoming core look like? We have that conversation with the regional office. What does the incoming core look like? And then, second, which of our principals are going to be supportive of core members, are going to help them learn and grow and develop? Which of our schools already have core members? And then where is the need? So for us in the Rio Grande Valley, we have a very hard time with math and science placements in high school. And so looking at our campuses that are IB or the AP for All initiative that we have, we typically have to look at that. And then Summer Institute plays a big factor. Like, are they going to be here for AP Institute? Are they going to be here for some of the training that needs to happen before they start teaching the first day of school? So those are just some of the things I think that impact us when we're thinking about where to place core members.
I think in St. Louis, it's an interesting context because St. Louis City, we are the lowest paying district in our region. If you drive 15 minutes outside of the city, you can make upwards of $18,000 more per year for each teacher. So we have to think about this a little differently. We have declining revenue right now, and we realize that we're not going to be able to compensate teachers at a rate in which our county partners are able to. So we have to think about, how do we invest in people? How do we get people so deeply driven by the mission and have the core values of why we're here and what change we can make? Because I actually find that to be a bigger motivator. So we have, in our district right now, I think we have two camps. We have a camp of teachers that honestly, and I would disagree slightly with Tommy in the sense that I do think there's at least a teacher shortage in St. Louis of quality teachers. I think that's the real shortage we have. And so we have a low quality teaching force, and then we have those that are really successful, and they're polar opposites. So those that are really successful are staying because they're getting success and be rewarded for it. And it's not through compensation, it's through success. On the other side, we have folks that just won't get a job anywhere else. And we haven't found an effective way to get them out of our district into another place where they can continue their career.
Well, and with that, Teach for America is part of our strategy because we do hire so much, so it is a part of our strategy. Knowing that our state only produces about 1,200 teachers a year, and I'm hiring upwards of 2,500 a year, it becomes an important part, an integral part, but it is just part of the strategy that we have.
And Pat, can you talk more about what are the things that have changed? Like, what concrete things? So, Dave, I heard you talk about we have to sort of incentivize and figure out how do we keep people in a city where they can literally drive 15 minutes and make a substantial amount of money, greater than in your district. So what are some of the concrete things that you all are thinking about, given the external factors playing and the internal things that you are dealing with to drive towards retaining and attracting strong talent?
I think the retention piece is the most important piece for us, and being able to keep those quality teachers that David talked about. Quality is essential to the success of a school, and being able to bring all teachers along to that quality. And what I see is, we just recently had a major shift in our contract. We no longer require actually higher ed hours to move over on the salary schedule. It is a personal growth plan that each teacher does with their individual principal, and it's based around what's important for their classroom. And so it's a big shift for us, but it helps that teacher drive what they're doing. And the support that TFA gives to their teachers in those first 2 years is essential to the success, but it also bleeds over into the rest of the buildings, which is important. So it becomes all part of that strategy of changing that culture of a school and making it a better place.
Great. And Joanne, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit because I know over the years, IDEA has also sort of figured out, like, you've done some concrete things to make sure that you can change your human capital strategy. Can you name some of those?
Yeah, so I would actually echo Pat a little bit. Obviously TFA placement at IDEA Public Schools is just one of many strategies. I think our biggest strategy is like local recruitment at the local university, because we just get so few core members in terms of need. Although hearing you, Pat, I almost want to send them over to you in Las Vegas because I think your need is a little bit bigger. But some of the things that we've done to really work on, retention has just been development of core members. So, we find that they really, we have a whole teacher career pathway. And so we've got things in place for those core members who want to be in the classroom long-term. And we've got compensation in place so that they don't feel like in order to, make more money, I've got to leave the classroom and I've got to get on, the assistant principal slash, what we call HQ track or headquarters track. And then for those that do, then there's a very clearly defined pathway for that too, right? So teacher to teacher leader to assistant principal to a very robust principal in residence program, and then principal placement. So I think that we have a lot of things in place also to just really tie them to their community, and ways to really engage them in after school programming and other things. I think that really make them feel as if the valley and the location, is home. And one thing I always tell them is get some furniture for your apartment because you're going to be here for a while. It's no fun to, go to work all day and come home to just a couch because then you never truly feel as if you're placed and you're staying, in a region and it never really just becomes home. So simple strategy, but I actually think it goes a long way.
Great.
So Boston Public Schools is a fairly small district, 57,000 students. But amongst the 57,000 students, they represent 140 countries and over 80 different languages. So this deep belief that diversity is our strength means that we need to also attract teachers who are also reflect that diversity. What's interesting in BPS, our hiring initiative to bring diversity into the teaching force really shifted a couple of years on one small thing. It was actually when we hired teachers. The earlier we hired the teacher, the more reflective of the diversity of our students that group of teachers coming in. So for example, in BPS right now, 86% of our students are students of color. 37% of our teachers are of color. There's a major contrast there. But when we hire teachers early, that means when we hire by April, 80% of those new teachers are teachers of color. And we're trying to shift the system, and it was actually a very, very small thing.
Great. I mean, the hiring time piece I think is really interesting because on the internal side of things, the earlier that we know where a core member is placed, then we can actually match up their institute support and start to build out what their development support looks like too. Okay, so we're going to shift a little bit. And we're going to try a little PTI. So for those of you who missed it, we're going to spend the rest of this session having our panelists respond to 4 questions. They'll have 5 minutes each to sort of go at it. And then we'll end with each panelist getting 60 seconds to share whatever they weren't able to sort of get out during the 5-minute period of time. I'm actually going to time them, so you will hear the timer go off, and we're going to shift. I feel like I need the ESPN music in the background, but we missed that part of the logistics, so we're just going to roll with what it is. So the panelists will get, I'll hit them with 4 questions. 2 will be debate desk, and that just means I'm going to toss the question out there, and they will start to sort of engage, and they're like, yep, I agree with that because, I disagree with that because. One of them will be something or nothing. And this is where I'm going to toss out a question to our panelists, and it's going to be a topic, and I'm going to ask them, is this insignificant? Is it something, or is it, is it significant? Is it something or insignificant? It's nothing. And then the last question they'll get is a fair or foul. I'll give them a topic, and they should start with, it's fair, or it's foul, and then start to respond. And they're going to sort of respond to each other. Everyone cool with the flow of this? Want to change it up a little bit? Yes, I like thumbs up. Thank you. So we're going to go into our first question, which is a debate desk. So you agree or disagree with this? So there's a lot of schools of thought on where we should be placing first-year teachers. And so there's one school of thought that says, give them the playbook, tell them to follow the playbook. They will get everything they need from following the playbook. They'll grow and develop, and then they can sort of go off and be unleashed. There's another school of thought that says, don't give them the playbook. Put them in the toughest situations where they have to build these muscles because the things that they'll experience while doing that will lead them to be, one, like figure out how to be a great teacher with support, et cetera, but also probably lead them to sort of longer leadership development. What do you think about that? Where should we place core members so they have the best shot? And I'll let Tommy. You take this question.
So I'm going to share, first I'll share my personal. Personally, my experience, I was thrown. I was 97, so I was thrown right into school, only core member, and I think that experience actually propelled me to be a leader because it drove me, and back then it drove me because I knew I could do a better job than my administrators. Then when I was as administrator, I know I could do a better job than some of the systems leaders. So I think my drive comes from that. However, I think as a systems leader, I think it's deeply unfair to expect all people, put all core members and all new teachers in a situation where it is very, very, very difficult to succeed. And so I guess I'm answering both ways.
So I believe that, I think that they need some support and structure from the very beginning. So I think, giving them that from the very beginning is essential. But they also have to build that collaborative spirit across the school. So they need to be able to feel like they can go to those veteran teachers in the building who may be the leaders of the building and learn those leadership skills. But I've also seen where it's personality that makes the difference. And so if that core member has that drive and that passion, then they're going to lead naturally as they go forward. So we got to give them that support to make them successful. We got to make sure that they understand the environment they're working in. But we need to sometimes just turn them loose as the leader that they want to be, not necessarily force them into that.
So you also in the middle, Pat, or you are?
I'm in the middle. I am in the middle. I think that there's certain aspects to that. You want to give them that safety net to fall into, but you want to give them the chance to shine too.
Go ahead, David.
So I'm going to be the Mike Wilbon here and go out on a limb and actually say, throw our core members where the greatest need is, right? I think the safety net, I get that. I definitely feel that's important in their growth in the long term. However, the need is where our kids are. And so put them in a place where they are going to, struggle, they're going to have challenges. I think they'll learn so much about teaching and learn so much about how not to teach maybe from some of their colleagues, but nonetheless, they'll be in a situation where they'll be forced to figure things out a little bit different. And I say that after actually being a principal in a charter school where we, a lot of coaching went on. There was a very intense push to, make sure our kids were reaching high expectations every single day, and there were new core members who got a lot of support. I question now, being back in the district setting, how they would fare in a setting where they don't have those same safeguards. So I think there's just a greater need in district schools where there isn't that level of support.
Fatima, I would actually say that whichever we do, we just need to be transparent with core members. So what is the profile of the person that it is that we're looking for and that we're placing, and are we looking for a person who we're going to throw into a tough situation and we've got evidence in terms of the selection process that they're going to be able to navigate through that and be successful, or are we looking for a core member who we're going to be able to give a playbook to, and they're going to be able to take that playbook and run and get support in the district. And I think that's maybe where confusion comes, and I feel like over the years, maybe it's like, some years we're doing we're looking for folks that we can put in tough situations, and they have to, no matter what, our situations are tough, right? But we're looking for folks in terms of a profile that we can put in tough situations and they're going to figure it out, or now all of a sudden, we're doing a 180 and we're looking for folks that we can give a playbook to, and they're going to go into a district and they're going to be successful. I think you have to be transparent with the core member, and you have to be transparent with the districts and communities that are receiving them.
I have to disagree with David a little bit because I've seen firsthand experience with my own teachers that I have in my building, and just talking to recruitment and getting the numbers. Like right now, we have a 30% retention. So for me, that's pretty low, knowing the potential that our core members come in with. And when asking why, most of the time is that lack of support coming from leadership. And I know that if they've gone through that rigorous selection process, the potential is there. We know for teachers, for the most part, they need the will, the skill, and the confidence. So we need to put them in an environment that is going to provide or help fill the gap that they have. So if they need a little bit of confidence or skill, then the admin or leadership team is going to step in and help them with that.
That was like perfectly timed. We have not rehearsed this either, so thank you. So let's go to the next question. Fair or foul? And I want you to start with, is it fair or is it a foul? So our regions, we talked a little about retention and what leads to retention. And our regions sort of look at a school's ability to retain core members as a part of the sort of puzzle pieces of putting together sort of their placement strategy. Do you think it's fair to consider retention and a school's ability to retain core members as a part of our placement policy? And should schools be on the hook for this? And what part should Teach for America own in this?
I'm going to jump right in. I think it is fair. I think it is extremely fair. We're actually looking as part of our new contract with our administrators to include teacher attraction and retention as part of a pay for performance plan for our Title I schools. So I think it's very fair that we look at that factor and ensure that all of our administrators are understanding that our teachers are the success makers in our school with our students. So keeping the best and the brightest is what you want to do.
And how do you do that, Pat?
Well, I think it's culture and climate. I think you have to build that collaborative culture and climate in your building and understand that there are, like David said, weak links in the school. You surround yourself with the winners. You make sure you focus in on that 90% that you're going to be able to move and work, and the others you look at counseling out.
I agree. I think it's completely fair. In fact, not only for principals in terms of teacher retention, every single principal at Idea Public Schools has a teacher retention goal. In fact, every single manager at Idea Public Schools has an employee retention goal. So it's about keeping the great folks that are in our district, really helping, kids be successful and achieve. And the way we do that is by great leaders, right? So great leaders, great managers are going to be able to keep people at their schools or in their line of work and in their line of supervision. So I absolutely believe that that schools should be on the hook for core members because the core members are teachers at their schools.
I also will go with fair. I think it is extremely fair to place that on the onus of the school leadership. Similar to Pat, we are creating our Excellent Schools Transformation Tool, which will actually have a key performance indicator that will speak directly to teacher retention. And also speaking to the district side, actually I think the district should take some ownership in the actual teacher retention as well and playing a part in making sure that we are keeping our core members beyond 2 years. So definitely fair.
Nothing to add.
Yeah, I
That's
agree
exactly
too.
right.
Great. So everyone thought that was fair.
I feel like there should be a devil's advocate, though.
Can I ask, so I'm going to ask a follow-up question. We have more time. What is Teach for America's role in that, right? Like, what is Teach for America's role versus what is the school or district's role in it? Because I hear you that it's sort of fair, but then as the sort of entity that brings them in, where do you think that lies?
I think there's capacity within Teach for America. I think that the wonderful engine that is Teach for America has some systems that our system just does not have to retain folks. And even just conversations and processes that attract folks to Teach for America, if they could help the district, honestly, professional develop us on how to retain great teachers. I don't think there is enough of that. I also think there's some strategic conversations that Teach for America and the district office could have more on an ongoing basis. It sounds like maybe in Tommy, in your region, that's something that's pushing down the road. But I think some of that synergy is super important between Teach for America and the district office.
Great. So the next question, is this something or is it nothing? So as with every generation, right, like we know that a lot of, with every generation, we know that many pundits have sort of shared that expectations for millennials in their work environment has shifted things and has shifted how employers have to think differently about how to recruit and attract and retain of folks, period. So do you agree with this? Like, is this something that, like, is this not just sort of someone sort of writing this off? Is this something or is it nothing? And how do you think is impacting your approach to talent recruitment and management right now? And if it is something, like, what are the implications for organizations like Teach for America as well?
You want to start? Okay, because I can speak for my school, and I think it's something because I have a lot of millennials coming into my school, and I see the different attitude, the expectations that they have, so I have to be ready to keep up with them in terms of offering them the opportunities. I have some of my teachers here, and they come with speaking other languages, they're teaching coding and doing all these things, and I know with teaching there's a lot of responsibilities and talents that we can definitely use. But also we need to be able to use them in different capacities so they can feel fulfilled as professionals and that they are being maximized, their potential is being maximized. So be ready as a leader, and I'm sure that district leaders as well, to have pipelines, offerings in place for them so they can really feel they're multitasking and they're continuously growing and getting the opportunity to collaborate with others. So I think it's something.
And I would agree. I think it's definitely something. Just the way that we recruit has gone to a more social media approach as to how we get out there and find our teachers. So our recruiting methods had to change. When you talk about keeping them, we have to change the way we do professional development. We have to change the way that we collaborate. We have to understand that the classroom instruction is going to be different because of the tools that they bring that many teachers who are experienced teachers don't bring to the table. So it is definitely something we have to understand that we have to shift with the times. That doesn't mean we throw everything out, but it means that we morph it to help fit the students of today with the teachers that we're getting today.
So I would yes and all that. Also, on top of it, leadership opportunities. We have to find opportunities for teachers to lead outside the context of their classrooms as much as within their classrooms. I think the teaching and learning is just transforming. I hope in 2025, what learning looks like in our schools doesn't look like what's going on right now. And so we actually have to rapidly disrupt how we think about teaching in terms of time, in terms of space, and we have to depend on our youngest teachers to help redefine what that new reality.
I would agree with Tommy on that. I think there was a interesting research paper done by Google who actually described the future in this way, that our students that are in schools now, 60% of the jobs that will be available have not even been invented yet. So how we have to actually approach educating our kids is a lot different, and so those that are educating them, we also need to approach them differently. It's simple things as much as there was a moment yesterday when I was trying to actually contact one of our younger principals, 26-year-old principal, who we just had a conversation about things, and I called her just to see if I can connect with her. She didn't answer it, but then I shot her a text. She responded right away. It's just a fascinating difference between how the different generations actually connect and actually respond to things. So I think we have to be nimble and be able to connect with the folks that are educating our kids differently.
And one thing I would add, when I went out, in the past years, I've substituted in a TFA classroom as part of the environment, and seeing what skills they have versus the skills I had when I was in the classroom, it brings a whole new, I guess, appreciation for what they bring to the table.
I want to just reemphasize, I think, one of the things that Tommy said in terms of we have to get disruptive in terms of how we think about the school day, the school year, the school week, the school calendar. I definitely think it's something, and I actually think it's going to contribute maybe to the teacher shortage because so many other professional positions, you hear this, on the road, work from home whenever you want, unlimited vacation, a year paternity leave, and classroom teachers can't do that. We can't take, we've got kids in a classroom who are depending on us, who are counting on us to make sure that they're learning and growing and developing. And so, the teacher can't work from home. The teacher can't, have unlimited vacation or work from anywhere in the world. And so if that's the way that the professional workforce is going, it's going to be more and more unattractive for folks to choose the teaching profession as a whole.
Add to that, I think if we don't redefine what teaching is, we are not going to close achievement gaps. We have not closed achievement gaps. 25 years into this mission, black and brown boys are not graduating from college. So if I'm thinking about our students are falling off track, or our students are incarcerated, or trying to re-engage, and we're trying to say, okay, put a teacher, let's get a small group of students that may fit that profile, let's put them in a school from 8 to 3, we're going to continue the school prison pipeline. So we got to absolutely disrupt.
Great. And I'm curious from Tommy's prompting, ways that we're starting to see that play out right now, right? So we're saying yes, it's something, but what are the ways outside of yes, sort of taking in what they're saying, but what are some concrete things that you're seeing that's even changing how you all are thinking about things?
So there's a 1992 core member, Beth Anderson, who
Yes.
started a charter school network in Massachusetts, Phoenix, and that is a population they serve. But it's done through blended learning, it's done through small groups, it's in the communities. Like, there isn't a work hours per se in that model. And I think that's, like, it's really intriguing, but I hope we can use such models before kids get in prison, so.
I think we've done, Bettina, I think we've done small things. So we make sure, you know, in terms of the school calendar, that every single month there's a 3-day weekend, because we know kind of personal time and, you know, other things are important. We have dramatically reduced our summer calendar. So, I mean, God, the summer calendar was sometimes almost more stressful than the entire school year with the amount of PD and summer school requirements, et cetera, that, you know, we ask of teachers. And so we implemented, like, you know, blackout Fridays, so there's no scheduled meetings, no scheduled trainings, no summer school on Friday, so that, you know, there's not that high intensity pressure in the summer. You're a little bit more lenient on the dress code. You can wear your blue jeans and your gray t-shirt, you know, to work. So I think just, you know, simple things, I think, to, you make the school available, like you give teachers keys, so the school's available, you know, after hours on weekends, on Saturday school or Sunday school if they want, so that they just feel a little bit more, you know, ownership in terms of, you know, their time and how they spend it at school.
Great. So we're going to go to our sort of last question, which is debate desk. And I want you all to sort of be 100% honest. So you have the task right now of deciding where to place 100 core members in your local context, right, and community. How would you distribute them? And, like, all is fair in this argument. You can say, give them all to IDEA, Joanne. Like, you can actually say that's what you want. But how would you think about just distributing them, and really sort of take us into, like, to what things are going into that? I know, Joanne, you said things about math and science being your greatest need. Would you just sort of disperse them all into all math and science schools in the secondary levels? Sort of where would you all place them if you were charged to do this? And be honest.
Yeah, I can start. So I do want to say all at IDEA, but I actually won't. So the privilege of being the superintendent at IDEA, but my sister-in-law is also the executive director of Teach for America in the Valley. And honestly, I think, I mean, I think about situations like Pat. I asked him before we came up, I said, how many teacher openings do you have on the first day of school that are not filled? So how many vacancies on the first day of school? And he said 600. So if you're a district and you have 600 vacancies on the first day of school, so, you know, times what, 20, that many kids are starting the year with a substitute, I'd say give them all to Pat. Like, I mean, I know that, you know, we've got a recruitment team and we're gonna get those positions filled no matter what. Like, who are the districts in your regions that, based on data, are just unable to fill their teaching vacancies by the first day of school? And, like, our job ultimately in this work is to ensure that every single kid, regardless if they're in my district, in your district, or your district, has access to a great teacher. And so if we're gonna go with the tough situation and sink or swim, like, take them all and put them in Pat's district, because he's got the need.
I will go with need as well, but we have to look at, like, obviously the highest need school, because I'm looking at my district. There are going to be a lot of openings, but some schools are more attractive than others. So we really have to think about, I think schools like mine, we have everything, Title I, ELL, SPED. So our need is going to be different, even from a school that has 10 vacancies, but we know they can fill up really quickly because they're in a high-income area, whatever the case is. So looking at need, and also the other thing I would do is get the principals together. I don't know if other districts do it. I think Joanne was saying they get the principals and ask them, but I've never seen my colleagues, like, in the same room talking about Teach for America. And I think it would be very important to bring us together, talk about the expectations, the profile, what they're gonna bring to the table, and then we can really decide which principals are gonna offer the opportunities and the support that they need to be successful and maximize the potential that they have, and willing to take the risk that after the 2 years, they may be ready not maybe to leave the classroom, but take other roles like department chair, literacy chair, and that's okay with them. And as a principal, I'm comfortable with taking that risk. So.
Great, and Helen, I'm gonna push you a little bit and say, there's 100 of them. What percentage are you, like, focused on math, science? What percentage are sort of in your own school? Like, if you had to break that 100 down.
Well, my need is, well, we have the majority of our students are English language learners, and we have 20% special education. So I will definitely focus our core members, at least in the elementary, to be in those schools, and 90% are higher Title I. So I can't speak a lot about high school because I don't have a lot of experience, but obviously I agree with Joanne. If it's science and math, STEM subjects, then absolutely. But at least in elementary, look for those high, subgroups, like special ed and English language learners, as well as poverty.
So I would take all 100 core members, and I know earlier I said sink or swim. I would actually give them a little bit of a life jacket. And I actually would want them to be in our elementary schools, teaching interventions for our kindergarten through second grade classrooms in reading. I think if we don't close the reading gap, we won't close any gap. And so I would put 100 of our core members spread across our 35 elementary schools, about 2 to 3 core members in each. For the first year, they would be reading intervention teachers, and just get a ton of training, maybe even send them to IDEA to get the professional development, and then actually be deep in the weeds in how to become really good at teaching kids reading first. Year 2, different discussion.
Well, for me, that's an easy question. I don't have to worry about that too much. We obviously focus in, a majority of ours go into the hard-to-fill need areas, math, science, special education. We do have a growing elementary teacher need, though, in our community. And so I think, when I look at David and what he said about the K-3, our K-3 initiative, both at the state and the district level, is essential to success. And I think that's personally one of the ways that we are going to change the black and brown issue. Many of the behavior issues we see in students are because they don't have access to the academics, and we've got to change that. But we can't do it alone. It's got to be support from the home as well. And so it is teaching them how to engage with the parents and engage with the community. I think that's the success that we're going to see.
So I'll take a stab and say 50 of the teachers spread out in very special contexts, such as schools. We have some very high-performing schools, but they are high-performing for some of the students only, and infuse those schools with like new energy. I would take a different group. I would take another part of that 50% and make sure that they're clustered together with very effective leaders in some of our schools that just need massive transformation. Then the other 50%, really like what David said, like be super strategic on system priorities, like reading by 3rd grade, Algebra 1, and so making sure that we're doubling down at particular places for kids.
Great. Thanks, y'all. So you all will get sort of 60 seconds of sharing whatever you sort of didn't get a chance to share out, or take us down sort of another line of thinking that you want to make sure sort of got some oxygen in the space. And then we'll turn to our Q&A. So if you have questions that you didn't sort of get answered so far, write them down. Folks will walk around the room, and then we'll start our Q&A section. So anybody want to start for the 60 seconds? Pat, can we start with you and just work our way down?
Sure.
Great.
That'd be great. First and foremost, I think that being the non-alum up here, I have an amazing appreciation for what TFA brings to the table. I think it's essential for me as a leader, even as large. I have 40,000 employees. We're the largest employer in the state of Nevada. But it's important for me to make that personal connection with all of my employees. Our executive director, former executive director, offered me opportunities to sit down and talk and listen and engage with our TFAers and be able to help me understand that perspective, because I don't have that perspective as a former alum. So I think it's important that I not only value what they bring to the table, but I enhance what they offer and give them opportunities to be successful. It is about our employees. That's the only way that we're going to make a difference for the students. And they seem to remember, TFAers seem to remember, that the student is the most important element that education has to offer.
As I listen to, the stories from the other superintendents and the principal here on the panel, it's really clear to me that there's still such a need for Teach for America, and there's such a need for core members, and so many districts are still struggling. to either find teachers or to find quality teachers. And so what's resonating with me in terms of closeout is just how can all of us in the room, how can Teach for America, how can we all just recommit? You get asked that survey, that question on the survey, like, would you recommend someone to Teach for America? And so how can we just recommit to recommending more folks to join the Corps, to get placed in classrooms in high-need areas, to be serving kids who otherwise might not be serving well? And what can we do to just ensure, Teach for America is doubling down on recruitment and finding enough Corps members just to place in schools, because it's clear that there's a big need still.
So I thought a lot about this actually last night, and I think I'll close with just a story about my 2-year-old son. Wonderful kid, a lot of energy. Favorite person is Elmo, even though we all know that's just a monster on Sesame Street. But he's in a place where he's going to have a life where he's going to get what he needs to be successful. I then walk into other buildings and see preschool kids, 3 and 4 years old, that don't. And I think as a Teach for America alum, and I ask Teach for America this, we have to do something different about how we approach early childhood education and the support of our kids at a very, very young age. By doing that, I think we change the trajectory of all of our kids, especially our black and brown males, who are more likely to be arrested than to actually go on and get an advanced degree. So I'm terribly fearful for kids that are my son's age right now, because those are the ones that are nearest and dearest to my heart, and I ask that we, as a force, do something different about that.
So I'll talk specifically to the context of Boston, because, as I said before, we don't have a teacher shortage. We pay our teachers really well. The average teacher salary on the books last year was over $90,000, and we have tons of colleges, and people want to live in Boston. That being said, our kids are not choosing the teaching profession, and we really want a teaching force that reflects the diversity of our kids. We need Teach for America's help to actually recruit the best in Boston, to stay in Boston, to teach in Boston.
And I'm just going to add on, because that's exactly what I was thinking. We need to find ways to really connect our Corps members to the community, so they have that sense of investment and ownership. And I think I don't know where this conversation is going to go after this, but I really don't agree when it comes to accepting the first offer. I think Corps members deserve the chance to go to the school, talk to the administrator, see if it's an environment that's conducive to their learning, where they're going to be able to grow. I think that's really necessary in order for them to be successful and where they can collaborate, because I don't think they should be thrown just in isolation, just to see with the handbook, because if together we rise, that means that as a team we need to have that support and that family that really has our back, right? And is able to maximize our potential. So yeah, I think that that's one of the biggest things for me is with the first offer. It needs to change, because I've seen how a lot of the Corps members either finish after their first year or second year immediately, because even from the get-go, they knew that wasn't a good place, the best place to be.
Cool. So I hear you sort of saying fit. First, can we just give our panelists a round of applause for going through that? And of course, I think there's a whole host of things that just resonate, especially when you start to talk about kids, as I am a mother of 8-year-old triplets who are being taught by alum and Corps members right now. So it's not just sort of talking about doing the work, but sort of seeing it and making sure that I know I would put my kids in front of the folks that we bring in. So we're going to turn to our Q&A portion of the panel. And so we got a couple of questions. If you have live questions too, if you just sort of stand at the mic, I'll acknowledge and try to go from the index cards to the microphone as well. So what, if any, role should Teach for America play in special education when it comes to placing in special education? I think there's a lot of different perspectives on our first-year teachers best equipped to do that. Should it be a more seasoned teacher? So should Teach for America play a role in the special education space when it comes to placement?
That's a great question. I mean, I think they should, because I think it's one of the, I think Hilda said it earlier, it's one of those hard to staff positions, special education, high school math, high school science. And so I definitely think that they should continue to place core members there. I've had a lot of friends that were core members that, taught in special education and are still in special education because of that experience today, doing great, wonderful things. Is it hard? Yes. Can the region support them? Yes, I think I don't know what they're called anymore, MTLDs maybe. There are people in the regions, I think, that will have to staff up and place. I feel like, from what I know, there are certain regions that have more special ed, more core members in special ed than other regions. So I think it's helpful to have, staff members in that region if you have a lot of teachers that are in those placements who can help and support them. But I definitely think it's a need, and so if it's a need, that's where we should be placing.
I would agree. I think the most important thing, though, is providing those supports so that they don't get into trouble with all the guidelines and requirements. But I think it's essential. Sometimes students who come to us with special needs need a special person, and TFA brings that quality.
I would just like to add really quickly, I have a comprehensive special education program at my school, and I think that as a first-year teacher, if you don't have experience or your degree is not in special ed, it's going to be very difficult to deal with both the compliance aspect and the practice in the classroom. So I would recommend co-teaching as a better model for a first-year teacher to get them more, better accustomed and trained into having that partner, in a setting like that.
Okay.
Only thing I would add to that, I agree with both statements, is that if we're going to be placing our core members in special ed classrooms, I would want them to have the motivation to get our kids out of special education. I think way too often our kids are put into special education tracks and they never get out, but coming at the work with a mindset of this is just a way to get you the education you need to be successful. And again, there are special populations which, they will be in special education for a duration of their educational career. However, a large majority of our kids are over-identified, and we need great teachers to make sure they get into the right placement.
Well said. Great. Thanks for the question. The second question we have is related to our conversation around millennials and sort of how you are altering things to account for what they bring to the table. If you have to do things differently for millennials, how do you mesh that with veteran teachers who are not sort of millennials, and how do those two things sort of marry and live in a school where they can sort of thrive together? I saw a lot of laughs and smiles when that.
Yes, well, I can tell you at my school I have both. I have the veteran teachers, old school, this is how we do things, and they're awesome. And I also have millennials who are fantastic, and I think the best way is for them to get the opportunity to collaborate with one another. Instead of isolating them, the millennials in the intermediate grades, and let's put the veteran up down, make sure those kids are reading, we really have to encourage them to collaborate because they both have so much to offer. I know, like in my school, my millennials help my teachers with technology. So they help them, with Google Docs and navigate all these different platforms. And then my most veteran teachers, they're very open to welcome them into the classroom and, do model lessons or, with management, I have this difficult situation, or with this parent, can you help me out? Because they have more experience with those type of situations. So I highly encourage that we set up an environment where we have both collaborating on a consistent basis and developing strong relationship, because it's kind of like a mentoring opportunity for both.
I laugh because we literally had this conversation in our central office last week about the intersection, and the analogy that was extended at the time was, are we losing our locker room, right? So we have different members of our locker room and may or may not be getting along, and someone that works for me actually said it's actually a remember the Titans moment. Because actually it's just a collision of two different teams that are coming together at different points in their careers. So actually, what do? I think we actually move beyond, yes, the technical things of teaching and learning, but get them to know each other as people, understand the core of what drives them in the work, on the good side, but then also on the fun side, right? Like, what is your favorite song? Oh, great, you like Earth, Wind, and Fire, and you like Drake. Fine. They play music. So using those, those opportunities to collaborate in a way that connects people with people first will allow education to move further.
Well, and I think it's what Tommy talked about in 2025. It's the way that education is going to evolve and change is when you intersect, the old with the new. You honor the past, but look to the future. And so I think that's the way it's going to evolve.
Yes, so we expect our teachers to be teaching in diverse settings with students with diverse learning needs. Then school administrators, teacher leaders, when we facilitate adult learning, it also needs to be the same way. So I think you absolutely need to bring people together through collaboration.
We actually kind of vary in, I think a lot of principals intentionally mix grade levels to do this. So typically, every grade level has a grade level lead, a content lead, a grade level team leader as well. And so you always try to make sure that every grade level has your more seasoned veteran teachers as well as, your newer teachers, which typically for us are brand new. So I guess those would classify as the millennials. But we're actually seeing a big divide. I don't know if other districts do. We actually see a big divide between elementary and high school. So you just have more seasoned veteran teachers at the elementary level, and then more of the millennial, force at the high school. And so we're going to have to be very intentional about how and for us, those are separate. They're housed on the same building, even though they have separate principals. And so we'll have to be very intentional about how we get those folks in terms of, cross-content collaboration to work together.
Great. And so there's another question, Tommy, I think it specifically sort of talks to these other places where we need to think about placing teachers. And so there's a question about in certain districts, and this person calls out New York City, where the only place you can opt in to teach is to teach with incarcerated youth and youth involved with the juvenile justice system. And I also know when I taught in Baltimore too, there was this sort of track that you could to work with that student population. Should there be more of a focus to get first-year teachers into that track and thinking about some of those populations outside the ones we discussed here?
Well, if there is a need, I think the answer is yes. Hopefully, we don't have to have that need in 10 years, but it is real. You see every single day. There are kids that try to re-engage, but just do not have the supports, and they do not have the caring adults that are willing to re-engage them back and keep them out of the pipeline. So, absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else thoughts on that question?
I think I've been the big proponent, if there's a need, place core members there. So, yeah, I'd agree.
So it says, how much influence should Teach for America have on the specific schools within your district that interview or hire core members? So I think sort of getting back to that first sort of cluster of variables that we talked about, what do you see as Teach for America's sort of role and purpose once a core member is placed in a school? And Hilda, I'm going to throw that to you as a principal.
So there's two parts of the question?
Yes.
Okay, so what was the?
So how much influence should Teach for America have in sort of determining the schools within a district that they place in?
Well, I can speak about the district, the DC region, and basically the way it works is they just, I'm the only TFA alum who is a principal, so I get first dibs. Fortunately, I get to see those resumes ahead of time, so I get to interview a little earlier and before, but after that, it's through a teacher fair, and then, yeah, the core members just interview, they go table to table, and then first offer, they have to accept it. So I think they look at need in terms of more like vacancies in Title I schools, but that's about it. I don't think they try to do any matching in terms of school leader profile or leadership and the actual core member. And then the second part was?
What do you sort of see as Teach for America's purpose once core members are actually placed in that school? How do you work with them? Like what should be Teach for America's purpose with them after that?
Absolutely. So with TFA, I think it's key to be in constant communication with the mentor. So we need to be on the same page. What are the expectations of the school? Because in every school, principals have a lot of autonomy in terms of what are their non-negotiables. So what does collaborative planning should look like, and what does good instruction look like? Like in my school, for example, now we have a partnership with Johns Hopkins. So we're being very strategic about what needs to happen in certain parts of the lesson. That may not happen in other schools. So if I don't inform the TFA team of this is what's expected when you walk into the classroom, then it's The risk is that the core members are going to receive mixed messages. Like, my admin wants to do this, but then TFA wants me to do that, and it's going to be very confusing for our core members and to be successful, because it's like, what do they really want me to do here? So I think it's key that once you're there, TFA has established that partnership with the building and communicated constantly, so also the professional development needs of the teachers are met both ways. So TFA can tell me, I've noticed that so-and-so needs some, support in classroom management. Then I can also come to them and say, I've noticed that we really need to work on this teacher when it comes to question and discussion techniques. And then great, they can chime in and fill that gap.
So like a unified umbrella of support,
Correct.
basically. Other people, thoughts on that?
I think it has to be a collaboration, complete collaboration between TFA and the school leaders and the central office. I think that if we don't have that honest dialogue at times and talk about placing teachers in the right schools, there are probably, and I don't know specifically because I don't deal with the specific placement, but I will tell you, I'm sure that there's TFA will say, you know what, we're not going to stick somebody in this school anymore. This is not a place where we want our candidates, and I think that's a fair deal. You have to have that collaboration piece all along the way. It has to fit for both organizations, or it's not going to be successful.
I'll play devil's advocate here. Sometimes I feel like they do a little bit too much. I feel like as a district, we've got a pretty robust, teacher training program, that starts with, 3 to 4 weeks of new teacher training in the summer and just, goes on throughout the year. And I always feel like, well, when I was a core member, and sometimes it's hard to separate your own experience, I was like, there were like 80 of us and 2 people in the regional office. And like, obviously we're a rural area. It's like, and their job was to make sure like there was a party for us to go to every weekend, to like build core and collaboration and spirit. And now as a district, I feel like, sometimes there's that tension between, well, my Teach for America person's coaching me around this, the district's coaching me around this, you're telling me I need to teach Saturday school on Saturday, but Teach for America's telling me I have to go to this training on Saturday. So sometimes it can really get hard, and we have to be really, really strategic in planning out our entire calendar with like the Teach for America office, because we don't like putting, our core members in that situation where, well, I got to teach Saturday school because my kids aren't making it, but Teach for America telling me I have to be at this required PD. And I think sometimes it can create tension with the district office.
Great. Thanks for that. So first, can we give our panelists a round of applause? And so we're going to end the session how we started the session. So I'm going to ask you all this question again, especially hearing from folks from completely different parts of the country with different contexts, sort of hearing where there's shortages that still exist, where there's special populations that aren't sort of getting the needs, getting sort of the talent that they need to address those. So do you think Teach for America is getting it right when it comes to core member placement? And show your cards. Interesting. So I feel like I saw more of a sea of red and yellow, and now I'm seeing a sea of yellow with some hints of green and still some red, which is fair. I mean, a part of asking you all that was not to sort of convince you otherwise or to have you walk out of here believing that we were sort of getting it right. The purpose was to understand and start to unpack a little bit that with 52 different regions with special and unique contexts, that we have to consider those variables that I brought up in the beginning in different ways. And how they play out, starting with the regional vision, is going to matter. I'm also going to acknowledge one other thing. There's a bunch of questions that I'm sure have come from either a combination of core members and others that are about where we sort of allocate core members and preferences and assignments. So having been an ED, also sitting on our national team, I have those questions here. Our panelists would not have known those. So I will stick around afterwards if folks have questions about that, so you can come up to me and I'll help sort of sort through some of those. That being said, can we give our panelists a round of applause one more time? Thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the summit.